I'm Neil Clark, and I am presenting Sputnik for George and Gayatri. Now, they've got an awful lot of coffee in Brazil, but they've also got an awful lot of political and economic turmoil too. Nearly a year after assuming his presidency, Michel Temer is overseeing the country's worst recession. People are taking to the streets, and the anti-corruption investigation, Operation Car Wash, could see Temer himself impeached, just like his predecessor, Dilma Rousseff. Will the country wake up and smell the coffee? And can they recapture the optimism of just a few years ago? Joining us this week to help us find out is the analyst Victor Fraga. Victor, a very warm welcome onto the Sputnik.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. So let's talk about Operation Car Wash, this giant anti-corruption probe that's been going on now for how many years? 2 or 3 years? What's it all about, really?
It's been going on for about 3 years. Initially, it looked excellent. People thought this is a huge corruption scandal. You are unveiling a lot of wrongdoing and the oil giants. But then slowly people began to realize that the objective of Operation Car Wash wasn't to destroy corruption, but to destroy a single political party, the Brazilian Workers' Party.
All right, okay.
Proof of that is not a single politician from the PSDB, the neoliberal party of Brazil, has ever been summoned to give a statement, let alone being prosecuted, while people from the Workers' Party have been consistently persecuted. Dilma was ousted not because of Operation Car Wash, but due to an accounting technicality called fiscal peddling, so moving a budget from one area to the next, something very common. Every single president in office since the dictatorship had done it. So Operation Car Wash plus the coup d'etat, which we saw last year, were instruments in the fight against the Workers' Party, the demonization of the Workers' Party so that they could be removed from presidency, and that the PSDB, with the party in power right now, which is technically a center party, Michel Temer's party, but they have implemented a very aggressive neoliberal agenda. The Guardian labeled it the most extreme, the harshest neoliberal package in the world.
There's been lots of cuts in spending, hasn't there, been announced? And the pension age is being risen, isn't it?
Yeah, it should. 49 years of work.
Wow.
And public spend in healthcare and in education has been frozen for 20 years. I can't
20 years
for 20 years. For 20 years.
Wow.
So they've amended the constitution to implement these extreme changes, these extremely violent changes. They would not be able to do that under the Workers' Party because it's a left-wing party which has implemented a lot of social programs. Has lifted 40 million people out of poverty. So all of a sudden you had Operation Car Wash, this coup d'etat with a thin veneer of an impeachment. The Brazilian constitution does allow for an impeachment, but it's for a high crime or a misdemeanor, not an accounting technicality. Even Michel Temer himself has recognized that Dilma has been ousted not because she's corrupt, but because she failed to embrace what he calls the bridge to the future. It's his extreme neoliberal program. I would call it bridge to the 19th century, bridge back to slavery. But he said himself, she's not corrupt. She has been ousted because she failed to embrace the bridge for the future. So she's.
So we're really talking about a coup here, aren't we?
Yeah.
A left-wing political party to destroy a left-wing political party in Brazil. Why isn't there more outrage about this internationally?
Well,
by sort of pro-democracy forces in the West, we haven't heard too much about it, have we?
Yeah, the international media has been very quiet and reserved about it. They've mistakenly reported that Dilma was ousted on corruption charges, and that's extremely dangerous because what we're seeing now, there are a lot of things surfacing. Aécio Neves, the defeated candidate, has been an audio has been leaked of him bribing someone from a company for 2 million reais, about £500,000, and threatening to kill the person if he did a plea bargaining and reported him. That's in an audio. So and people are stopping to believe the political establishment, and there's this very dangerous rhetoric. Everyone in politics is corrupt. No, not everyone in politics is corrupt.
So, Victor, what's really behind this? Is it a case of the Brazilian financial elites, the rich classes in Brazil, the establishment, trying to sabotage the Workers' Party? Is that what's really the basis of this?
Well, it's that. So the old elites have lost a lot of their privileges. So I have literally heard people complaining, I used to have 3 maids, now they're going to university, I can't hire a maid anymore. I have literally heard people say that more than once in different contexts. So the old elites have seen some of their benefits slashed. Needless to say, Brazil still has huge social gaps. Brazil was the 13th economy when Lula took power in 2002. By the time Dilma was ousted, Brazil was the 6th world economy, ahead of the UK. 40 million people had been lifted out of poverty, and Brazil had paid off its external debt with the IMF in its entirety, and was beginning to set up a bank with the BRICS.
Right.
So the US are used to seeing the countries in their backyards not doing a lot of noise, and once they do a little bit of noise, let's get these noisy people out. Let's stage a coup. So the US have been deeply involved in everything that happened in Brazil. I'll give you just some pieces of evidence. The American ambassador, Liliana Ayalda, during the coup, she was also the ambassador in Honduras and in Paraguay, precisely at the time of the coup. So she's a coup expert, there's no question about that. The Judge Sergio Moro, who heads the anti-Workers' Party car wash investigations, he has links to the CIA. It has been revealed through documents in WikiLeaks. The protests on the streets, the pseudo-student movements which ask for Dilma to be ousted, have been financed by lobbyists at the Koch Industries. And this is no secret. If you go to the Koch Industries, the oil refinery in Texas, you will see pictures of the leader of a movement they call MBL, Kim Kataguiri. So these are not student movements. These are movements financed by very reactionary organizations in the US. And most important of all, the day after the vote of the coup in the lower house of parliament in Congress in Brazil, one of the leading figures of the neoliberal party, Aloysio Nunes, traveled to the US to meet with Thomas Shannon, who is the most senior person in Latin American affairs under Obama, who reports directly to Obama. So what we're seeing really is a counter-hegemonic movement, the US getting involved, jeopardizing, destroying democracy in Brazil with a view to undermine not only the BRICS, but oil in Brazil. It has been said that the US spent trillions of dollars to claim the oil in Iraq. In Brazil, they only had to lobby a few MPs. So what's happening now? Literally overnight, the illegitimate coup-mongering government destroyed and privatized the oil production in Brazil. We haven't reached the oil yet. The oil is very deep down in the Atlantic Ocean. It's called pre-salt because there's a layer of salt at the bottom of the Atlantic, and you have to go beyond that. So it takes many years, and the oil has just been discovered. But this money, which was going to go to healthcare and education under Dilma, is now being sold to international organizations. The first company to grab the piece of the cake was a Norwegian company, but a lot more are going to follow. And the oil industry in Brazil is going to be largely privatized. It's a message they're trying to send out. Don't get a metal worker such as Lula to run your country. We're gonna get there and get rid of him. Now they're trying to.
Well, let's talk about Lula, because he's head of the polls, isn't he? He's the most popular candidate for the next presidential elections.
So what's happened now is there was the audio leak from Aécio Neves, him basically saying, "I want 2 million," and the plea bargaining guy
Yeah.
will be shot. We should kill him if he doesn't follow our instructions, or something to that interest. Another senator was caught saying, Aécio Neves' best friend was caught saying just this week, I don't do anything wrong. All I do is traffic drugs. So that's how bad it is in Brazil. You have hard proof evidence. You have a video of someone handing a suitcase of Aécio Neves' cousin, handing a suitcase full of money for the bride. How harder can the evidence get?
Absolutely.
A hologram.
Yeah.
That's the only harder piece of evidence I can possibly conceive, and yet they're not taking any action against that. And against the Workers' Party, against Lula, they have been searching for a crime, searching for a reason to prosecute Lula.
Right.
And a very important phrase that a judge has coined in Brazil, who is also Dallagnol is his name. He's involved in the car wash investigations. He said, we have no proof against Lula, but we have conviction that he's guilty. So we're seeing lawfare. So Lula is not being prosecuted. He's being persecuted. You might be familiar with Jeffrey Robertson, who is the Australian-British human rights lawyer, who is Lula's lawyer. He says, the problem with Brazil is the justice system in Brazil is vestigial of the European system. So it's an old-fashioned European system, which no longer applies in Europe, where the same person collects the evidence, judges, and sentences you. So this judge, Sergio Moro, he collects the proof at his convenience, at his leisure. He judges and he sentences Lula.
Judge, jury, and executioner all in one.
And there's plea bargaining, which was actually introduced by Dilma with the best of intention. But plea bargaining has become equivalent to torture in the sense that the person being accused will say anything that they wish to hear in order to reduce the sentence. So yeah, Lula is guilty. Yeah, you want to hear Lula is guilty? I'll tell you Lula is guilty. And despite that, there's no evidence yet, and there will not be any evidence that Lula is involved in any corruption scandal. So on the other hand, what's happening in Brazil is so serious with the accusations against Aécio Neves. Because people no longer believe in the political establishment. And even the right-wing people who argued, oh, we got rid of the Workers' Party because they're corrupt. And now that they see that the neoliberal party is far more corrupt, they're simply arguing everyone is the same, they're all corrupt. And such rhetoric is extremely dangerous because if you demoralize an entire political establishment, you could open the back door to a military coup d'etat, or to something far more dangerous. So there's a big question mark hanging above Brazil right now.
Well, thank you very much, Victor, for coming on the Sputnik and shedding some light on the current political situation in Brazil.
And we do need some light.
Thank you.
With urgency.
Don't go away, because we'll be discussing political unrest in another BRICS country. Find out which one after the break.